How are you?
Very good, thank you. How are you?
I'm great. And so I wanted to obviously introduce you today to this Million Tree Pledge Meet the Pledger series that we're doing. And so Charli Adamson from Ecologi, welcome. You are actually a very integral part of the Million Tree Pledge. But do you want to say a bit about what you do at Ecologi?
Sure, yeah. So I am one of the account executives here at Ecologi. So I'm part of the commercial team. So we work with businesses, big and small, on their sustainability journeys and help them get set up on our platform. So that will include making recommendations about, how to use our products and, actually guiding people through that journey as well. So we find that lots of people have quite a lot of knowledge about sustainability, and sometimes people don't have so much knowledge. So actually it's really helpful for us to guide everyone and kind of help them along that journey as well.
So what sort of people come to you then? Because I feel like you're saying some people have some knowledge, some people don't. They're coming to you for a reason. I guess they want to do something good. They know that that's what they want to do. So what's their main driving factor?
It really depends. So we're working with about over 15,000 businesses at the moment, and that really ranges right across the full spectrum. So, right from sole traders. So it might be someone with like an online shop, for example, that wants to plant a tree with every product they sell, right up to massive enterprises. So, for example, last year we worked with Axe Island to offset 1 million tons of carbon, which was equivalent to the emissions of all of the drivers that they insure in Ireland. And in terms of the stakeholders that we're dealing with, it's a real mix. For some of the larger organizations, they are likely to have a sustainability manager in place already. But for your sort of SMEs and certainly smaller businesses, you're probably not going to have a dedicated sustainability team. So quite often you'll find that it'll be sort of someone that's championing this internally and is kind of really like flying the flag for sustainability, or it might be someone that's sort of vaguely doing something to do with the environment. So there might be an environment manager, for example, and find that suddenly they've got to calculate their entire business's footprint. So it really depends. And I think that's where we can really help and actually sort of provide a lot of resources to help these people educate their wider business as well.
How important is it, though, to have someone who's dedicated to that role? So, for example, like you said, in a large organization, that's much easier to do. There'll be a sustainability officer. But in a small organization, like how important is it to have someone who is known as a sustainability champion or whatever you want to call them, who is kind of responsible for that, rather than having everyone kind of chip in a little bit? What are your thoughts on that?
I think, sort of generally speaking, sustainability isn't something that just lives in a box by itself, right? This is like a holistic approach to the business. And actually, sustainability is something that covers all areas of our operations, whether that's, HR, and we're doing some sort of employee benefits, for example, like becoming a climate positive workforce, or, incentivizing a cycle to work scheme, right across to sort of more operational and logistics areas. So, for example, you might be offsetting the carbon footprint of your business from all of the deliveries that you make. And in terms of the importance of that role within the business, I think it's becoming, even more essential. We know that businesses are being held accountable now. Everyone is asking questions about, what are you doing for sustainability? And businesses that don't have this and aren't able to report on this are going to be left behind. And I think that's the thing that's going to kind of really ramp up over the next couple of years.
So I feel like, Ecologi is known by a lot of people already. But, there are also lots of other options out there to plant trees or offset carbon. So what would you say stands Ecologi out from the others? And what makes you guys different?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a couple of things. And the first I would say is our amazing platform. So, with lots of climate impact providers, you might get a certificate, but that's kind of it. And actually it's a bit of paper. What do we do with it? Whereas with our platform, it's fully engaging. It's available for everyone to share as well. So it's like a ready-made marketing asset. So anyone, whether that's your customers, prospects, stakeholders, your employees, can come and have a look at that profile, learn about any trees that you've planted, find out where they've been planted, what species they planted, who's planting them, which of the UN sustainability goals are they hitting, equally for carbon offsetting as well. Being able to make that journey from an understanding right through to B of checking the registry to ensure that project is properly accredited. I think we've made that as easy as possible and as engaging as possible as well. And I would say the next thing that stands us apart is our transparency. So pretty much anything that we know, we think you should know as well. And that's something that's really close to our heart. So we've got a public impact and operations ledger, which anyone on the internet can access, which is a record of every tree we've ever funded for planting, every carbon offset we've ever funded as well, with the receipts. It's all in there for anyone to have a look at.
I think that's so good, because I think there's a lot of skepticism out there, right? There is with everything these days. Like, you know, everyone feels like they're being lied to all the time, and because a lot of the time they are, that's the problem. So it's great that I think people are more transparent about it and that you can do that. And you guys can actually let people go and visit their tree, right, that they've planted and stuff like that.
Yeah, so the ones in the UK come with a what 3 words code. So that's that 3 meter square, really, really specific location. So as long as that tree is on public ground and you've got the rights, then yeah, for the UK, you're very welcome to go and say hi, take a selfie, go and find your tree. For the ones that are overseas, obviously it's a little bit more challenging because those sites tend to be a little bit inaccessible. And obviously we wouldn't be endorsing anyone flying out to Madagascar just to go and say hi to a tree. But what you can do instead is you can monitor them through satellite imagery, because we've got a new partnership with Restore, and that's just another level of transparency and due diligence that allows us to kind of share that with everyone, so anyone can log in and have a look at those projects and watch them growing.
That's really cool, and I think that's quite a fun team trip to go visit the trees that you planted in the UK. Actually, that's quite a nice little thing to do, actually, for a team bonding thing, for sure.
Yeah, definitely. I'd say if they're local, obviously we don't want to generate a huge carbon footprint but yeah.
That's great. So yeah, I feel like, you know, obviously Ecologi has done some amazing impacts in the world, which we're going to come back to in a minute. But I want to talk about the Million Tree Pledge first, because obviously this is why we're here, and we've got so many amazing people in the community who are all kind of having the same sort of passions and doing the same sort of things. Tell me a bit about how Ecologi got involved with the Million Tree Pledge.
Sure. So the Million Tree Pledge was kind of set up by Marcus and kind of a collective of like-minded individuals, one of which was Dennis Etema, who's our SVP of sales here at Ecologi. And there was a core group of us. I was involved in my previous role at Symbiotic as one of that core group, really setting up Ecologi. Setting up Ecologi, setting up a Million Tree Pledge. But it's essentially, you know, the concept is very simple. Pledge to plant 1 million trees and find 2 others to do the same. And where Ecologi comes in is being that sort of reputable tree planting provider to sort of support pledges in the background and help them not only to ensure those trees are being planted correctly and properly and being cared for, but also help you to communicate that impact as well, spread the word, and hopefully find a lot of other like-minded individuals that want to come and join our crusade.
It's amazing. And actually, just know that Marcus was supposed to join us today, but unfortunately isn't very well. So he would have been here to have this conversation and obviously be really proud of how much has been achieved, you know, by Million Tree Pledge in this time. You know, when you guys first started, did you think that this was going to have so much of an impact and it was going to be this effective with them and so many people take it up?
Yeah, I'm going to say we've had big ambitions. I think we knew that, you know, it's such a simple idea and it's so easy. Anyone can do it. You know, it doesn't matter whether you're a sole trader. We've got some really ambitious individuals within the group that are taking the pledge independently and also as part of collective forests. So, you know, that's a forest that's built up of small businesses and a couple of, sort of agencies that are working together to hit that million. So, yeah, I think we knew we were onto a winner. But actually the last year, you know, we've seen so many new pledges join. I think we're up to about 80 now. And we've planted over 8.5 million trees, which is phenomenal, you know, in just over 18 months, which is, you know, it's brilliant achievement.
So run me through those numbers again, because this is insane, right? So you've got, so first of all, obviously the Ecologi itself, but how many trees and pledges is a Million Tree Pledge responsible for?
So currently we have got, I think, 47 full pledges, as we call them, so that's million trees that have been pledged. Within that, you've got a breakdown of 5 collective forests. So that's groups of people working together. And then the rest of them, my jazz maths isn't working off the top of my head, but the rest of them are businesses that are pledged to plant 1 million trees. So bearing in mind, we started from nothing 18 months ago, and we've now planted 8.5 million trees. That impact is huge. And just for sort of to put that into context, the entire Ecologi community, which consists of, you know, over 15 million businesses and several thousand individuals and families, has planted 53 million trees, well, funded to plant 53 million trees since its inception in 2019. So actually, the 8.5 million that have been planted by the Million Tree Pledge, that's a huge chunk of that, that's been funded by a relatively small handful of really mission-driven businesses.
That's incredible. So just a small little community from a passion of some like-minded people has basically funded almost 20% of the trees that you guys have done overall, and it just shows you what collective action can do. And this is hopefully spreading the word about it as well. And I think that what I want to bring up is the costs around it, because this is something that most people worry about, especially now during this cost of living crisis. I think that, in fact, I saw a pledger the other day, Alex Holloman from Climbing Trees, and shout him out because he made a post about something the other day. He posted like another 110,000 trees or something ludicrous, some massive monster number. And he was like, yes, I could spend this on business development, but actually the environment's more important, and actually the world won't be here if we don't do something about it. And that sort of mindset is why he's a pledger, and why he's helping push the word out. And I just thought it was such a powerful message. But I know that so many small businesses, everyone out there right now is worrying about money. Like everyone in some form or other is worrying about money. And so I'm sure that some people are thinking, right, yes, I'd love to help the environment, but that comes second to my business and my family and my life and all that other stuff. And so they're sort of thinking, I can't afford to do this. But we worked out the costs, I think, and it wasn't as bad as it looks. And what are your thoughts around the costs? Because obviously you guys at Ecologi have actually even done stuff to help the pledges themselves, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So the cost to plant a tree is 24p. So the way that works at Ecologi is that we've got multiple different tree planting partners around the world. Some of those trees will work out a little bit more expensive than 24p. Some of them will be a little bit cheaper. But by offering that 24p price, it means that everyone has access to those full range of projects right around the world. So that would be, trees in Madagascar, Kenya, Mozambique, in South America as well. So Peru, Bolivia, Argentina. So that 24p doesn't sound like a very big number when you start, talking about a handful of trees. But by the time you get to 1 million, we're talking about £240,000, which is a significant chunk of money for a small business to find. But I think the important thing to stress is that, firstly, we're doing this over a number of years. Most businesses are doing this over at least 5 years. We've got a couple that are really paving the way for change and sort of putting us all to shame, such as Crystal, who managed to complete their pledge in, I think, 9 months and have now gone on to pledge 1 billion trees. But yeah, they're definitely flying the flag. But I think the other thing that's really important is that we've got to not see this as just sort of money that we're throwing away. Actually, this is an investment, and we're using this climate impact to drive growth, to drive loyalty, to sort of, be that point of difference between competitors as well. So that, yes, this is a lot of money, but we want businesses to ensure that you are seeing a return on investment on this. And this is something that we are really sort of using to cultivate growth within the business itself.
So when we're working it out, we're saying that 240 grand is a lot of money, but when you break it down, so we're saying with the collective forest, for example, we have a collective forest, which there's room in, by the way. So anyone who feels like this is too much money to invest in, but they want to be part of the whole community, then there's room in our collective forest. Come join us. Say if there's 10 businesses, that's splits it down very, very significantly to 24 grand. And actually, when you think about that, and if you're doing that over 10 years, we're saying that's just £200 a month for most businesses. And when you think about that, like what you spend £200 a month on, you probably spend more than that on coffee. I think we spend more than that on snacks for office. We just had like a big Graze delivery and stuff like that comes up yesterday, and all the little snacks that you buy for your team. It just adds up. So if you can cut down costs, which is what everyone's doing at the moment, and invest just £200 a month, you could actually make that much of a significant impact to be part of a 1 million tree pledge.
Absolutely. And I think
incredible.
Yeah. And I think, this folds really nicely as well into all businesses that should be looking to reduce their emissions and working on that reduction journey. And probably once you start sort of doing an audit of, what do we need? Can we change the suppliers? You'll probably find that £200, if not more, within that once you start sort of making those reductions anyway.
I think it's insane. And actually, I want to talk about that carbon offsetting that you just mentioned, because I think there's some confusion around it. And I think there's lots of myths around what carbon offsetting is. And I think it'd be really good to just clarify that for anyone listening, because it is confusing. There were lots of people and lots of providers talking about how to do it, and no one knows what's real, what are carbon credits, are we doing things right? So can we have a bit of like clarification on what that exactly entails?
Yeah, absolutely. So as part of your sustainability journey, businesses might be looking to offset their carbon footprint. And you can do that using verified certified credits from established projects. So the way that this works is you might have a project like a wind farm, for example. Now, that the funding and development of that wind farm is not being funded by the credits. Basically, the credits that are generated by that project are an additional revenue stream. So if we know that that project, for example, the wind farm, is reducing 100 tons of carbon by the fact it exists, because otherwise we would have been using fossil fuels to generate that energy, then you'll have 100 tons of credits that have been generated from that project. Project developers will work with organizations like Gold Standard and Verified Carbon Standard, who will come in. They will assess that project by a very strict methodology that is specific for that project. So a wind farm will be assessed very differently from a solar farm, for example. But they'll come in, they'll make sure it's being run properly, that it's being, people are being paid properly, treated fairly. They'll also, in some cases, look at, which of the UN Sustainable Development Goals are being hit as well and achieved by that project. And once they've done all those work, those credits go out on the open market to purchase. So Ecologi have a brilliant team in-house. Sorry, I've just lost you temporarily. Bear with me. There we go. Sorry. Package is on my side. Things are popping up. Anyway, we have a brilliant team in-house, our impact team. And basically, this is their whole role, to find really brilliant accredited projects, because this is wildly complicated. There is so much due diligence that goes on behind the scenes. If you or I went to the, sorry, it's my cat interrupting now.
Can we have an introduction?
We can. This is Snickers, who is a clean climate advocate. She's on most of my calls and is very annoying.
Oh.
So yeah, if you or I tried to go to the open carbon market and buy some credits, it's wildly complicated. There's lots of different quality. It's very different. Without that kind of knowledge and understanding, it would be really, really challenging. So what we're doing is we're working with our team in-house who secure these credits for us. We've also got a partnership with Silvera as well, who are a carbon intelligence platform. And what they do is they independently assess all of the projects that we support to verify that they are the most impactful projects that are available on the market. So then when you as a business come along and say, our emissions, we've calculated our footprint, we've made some reductions, and we're now in a position to offset those emissions. We know that there's 100 tons. We need 100 tons of credits, please. You can come to Ecologi and we can supply those credits to you from projects like the wind farm or solar farms, landfill gas capture, community initiatives, and some conservation projects as well. So in a nutshell, it's quite a long and long description, but the crux of the matter is, if we're talking about carbon offsetting, then you need to ensure that that project has got carbon credits attached to it. And I think this is where there's so much confusion around tree planting, because carbon credits can be generated from reforestation projects. They're mainly in the UK. They're a little bit few and far between, tend to be quite expensive. And there might be caveats within those credits as well, because if you plant a tree that's about this big, those emissions reductions are going to happen in the future once that tree is grown up. So you can't claim those emissions reductions now because they haven't happened. So essentially, the way that works is that, there might be a caveat saying that you can't claim that for 5 years, for example. Ecologi, none of the reforestation projects that we support currently are accredited carbon offset projects. So if we're talking about carbon offsetting, we're only talking about, wind farms, solar farms, all that kind of renewables projects, conservation projects. And if we're talking about tree planting, then that's what we're doing. We're planting trees.
I think that's so important you made that distinction, because there's also a lot of negativity generated around the whole tree planting thing because of that. And everyone, there are the haters or cynics out there who are just like, well, actually, every time you plant a tree, it emits more carbon, so it's doing worse for the environment. And you sort of like, well, yeah, at the moment that might be the case, but we're thinking about the future, and obviously it's gonna absorb a lot more carbon later on in the future. And I think that's that's where people are getting confused, and they're sort of like, oh, I'm going to plant some trees and it's going to offset some carbon, but it doesn't quite work like that, and you have to kind of invest in separate projects. So how can, you know, a business who wants to do well but isn't totally savvy in it, because let's face it, most people aren't completely savvy with this, like it is confusing for a lot of people, and the businesses out there who just want to do some good, who are realizing they've got a carbon footprint and they want to just minimize that, how can they recognize who's legit, like what sort of projects are legitimate, and basically how much they should be offsetting or investing? What should they be doing?
Sure, certainly. In terms of how much they should be offsetting, I think that's historically that's been really challenging for businesses, because there's not been a huge amount of sort of decent tools out there that are available for small businesses, and unless you've got several £1,000s to employ consultants, actually that's been a huge barrier. At Ecologi, we are launching a new tool called Ecologi Zero. And the way that that's going to work is it's going to plug into Zero accounting software. So that's Zero with an X, use matters. Look at where the business is spending money and create carbon calculations based on that. That's going to be launching next year. But so, for example, let's say you're a business, you've signed up to the platform, you've had a look, and you've managed to calculate your emissions using Ecologi Zero. I would say, in terms of finding reputable credits, that's got to be the most important thing, is ensuring that there are credits attached to it. And if you're looking at providers and they're telling you that, oh, we've got some projects, but they're being a little bit vague and you can't see where the projects are, you know, who has certified them? Is it gold standard? Is it verified carbon standard? Where have they been planted? Where have these projects taken place? Can you have a look at the registry? I would say all of those things are probably red flags. You really want to be going with a provider that can provide you with all of this information up front, so that, you know, you can use that for your certification as well. And in your so for example, if you are working with consultants, quite often they will ask you to evidence that those offsets have been purchased and that those reductions have been made. And if you haven't got access to any sort of certification or documentation, then you're not going to get through that. So I'd say that's the biggest thing to watch out for, is just make sure those projects are properly accredited.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's the same with everything, right? Is that you got to make sure you're giving your money to people who are actually doing the right things, because there are a lot of people out there who are kind of jumping on this as an opportunity to make money, which is, you know, not great, but that's what a lot of people do. And on that note, we should talk about greenwashing, because I feel like that is a big topic at the moment, and it's so prevalent, and it's quite scary how many people are doing that. So, you know, I guess for those who don't know what greenwashing is, it's, you know, claims of sustainability practice which are not actually happening. And this is going on with big companies. I think, was it HSBC was another one that's huge, that was just on the radar recently, and wow, like the negative PR around it is incredible. But talk to me about greenwashing and, you know, what's been happening out there and the danger of it, because I guess that the word sustainability now has almost become a bit of a buzzword, and it's almost become like, if you just say it and say you're interested in it, it's like positive PR, and people who don't actually care about it are just, you know, trying to benefit from it, like you said about, you know, trying to find people with legitimate certified credits and things like that. So what's been happening in the world of greenwashing, and you know, what can we do to kind of understand who's legit and who's not?
Absolutely. And I think there are a few exceptions, and there might be, you know, some big fossil fuel companies that are using, you know, lovely images of wind farms and things in their adverts. I would say, yes, that is blatant greenwashing, and they definitely shouldn't be doing that. But I think actually the vast majority of people do not want to be greenwashing. This is not something that they've set out to do. And actually what they've just fallen into the trap of making a claim that can't be substantiated, and then found themselves the victims of stone throwing and accusations. And I'd say this comes back to transparency. Any claim that you've made, you've got to be able to substantiate that, you know, using really clear language that can't be misinterpreted. You know, phrases like eco-friendly or natural that kind of don't have a clear definition. You know, what does that mean? Let's not use that. Let's, you know, align ourselves with the Science-Based Targets Initiative. Let's use proper climate vocabulary that's got clear definitions attached to it. And sort of let's, you know, make that, as I say, make that paper trail as well, so that anyone that wants to do a deep dive and learn a little bit more can do that. But I think greenwashing at the moment is really hindering progress, because every day I speak to businesses about their sustainability journeys, and sometimes you'll come across a business that's doing absolutely loads of amazing stuff. They've kind of really thrown so much into their sustainability journey, and they've made loads of changes right across the business, and they're not telling anyone about it because they're so worried of being called out for greenwashing that actually, it's just hindering progress. And I think the thing to remember is, sometimes we speak to lots of businesses that say, oh, we don't feel like we're in a position to talk about this yet and talk about our progress because there's something over here that we're still working on and it isn't as good as we'd like it to be. And I think the thing is to just be honest. We're never going to be in this situation where everything is completely perfect. This is a journey. It's definitely not a sprint. It's a marathon. It's going to take, these net zero targets for 2030, 2040. That's why they're so far ahead, because it's going to take a long time to make these operational changes. So actually, I think as long as you're honest and upfront and say, we're still working on this, we know we've got a long way to go, we're only just getting started, then that's fine. You can still celebrate those climate achievements that have been made, and just ensuring that you are substantiating those claims, and you can verify with data and evidence. Third-party verification as well, people like B Corp is another great way to sort of back up those claims as well.
Yeah, I think it's so interesting you mentioned all that, because last week on the Meet the Pledger series, we had Chris Thornhill, and he brought up a term that we learned at a conference a couple of weeks ago called green hushing. And yeah, so it's basically what you just described. So it's people who are too scared to say anything about their green initiatives and all the great work they've been doing, because they're scared of being called out or found a loophole that actually they're not as sustainable as you think they are. And so people are just not saying anything about it. And so they've termed it green hushing, and which is exactly what we don't want. Like you said, the point of, for example, what we're doing now is to spread the word, to spread the message about how impactful it can be, that small businesses or individuals can just do tiny little things, but it can lead to massive change. And there are so many people out there who are doing amazing work and just not saying anything about it. And that's because they're scared that they're going to be called out on it. And I feel the same thing. Like, we as a company do what we can and we do all these initiatives, but I'm really scared that someone's going to be like, oh, but, we saw that you took the team to Spain, and you went on a plane, and therefore that's bad for the environment. Or you're for example, I'm drinking coffee out of this cup and I'm not using a reusable cup, and that's really bad and all that sort of thing. But this is going to be recycling, and it's and there's little things about it, and I'm really paranoid about how I live my life and all the little things that I do, because I'm scared that I'm going to be called out. And I think that that's a natural fear amongst loads of people. And I wonder what can be done about it, because, this is something, and obviously you can't control other people's behavior who are going to call out on this. But for those who are like myself, for example, just trying to do their own little bit, we're not big organization. I'm not a big person. Like, we're just trying to do our little bit for the world. What would you do to encourage like small businesses like ours, or individuals like us who want to do things, but also still want to shout out about it because we want to spread the word? Like, what can we do to feel confident, I guess, like you said, avoid some of the terminology, but what can we do, like, in terms of actions to be able to spread the word, but also feel confident that we're actually not going to get done for, not being sustainable enough or something?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, we need large-scale systemic change to tackle climate change. Everyone understands this, but it does, and it can feel like a bit of a mountain to climb, because it's a huge mountain that we've got to turn the tide on the climate emergency. I think the best way to get people to change their habits and change their ways of working is to give them an option that's easier than what they were already doing, right? We know that human beings are ultimately pretty lazy. So actually, if you can make the right thing to do the easiest thing to do, then that's the best way to create large scale change. And I would say one of the easiest and best ways to get started for a small to medium business is to become a climate positive workforce with Ecologi. So that would mean joining our subscription service, so that and enrolling your team, so that for every person that's enrolled over the course of a year, we offset that individual's footprint. So that's not just the time that they're at work, but that's, their entire 24 hours in a day. So, picking the kids up from school, going shopping, all that normal stuff that everyone does. will offset your footprint and then additionally plant trees as well. So that's that sort of two-pronged approach to climate action. We're using the carbon offsets to really offset those and neutralize those emissions in the here and now. And then we're planting those trees to contribute to a nature-based solution for the future. So, 15, 20 years time, there's going to be that beautiful forest that's a real kind of permanent legacy from your business. And what's great about that is it takes just maybe 5 minutes to set up an account, if that, and then it will kind of run passively in the background. There's loads of things you can do with this if you want to, as we kind of spoke about a while ago, customer facing initiatives, tree planting and sort of rewarding loyalty and doing lots of other things. But equally, if you just kind of want to launch it and leave it, well, great, it's having a positive impact in the background and you don't need to do anything.
Yeah, and actually that's what we've done, but we need to do more. We've been doing it for, I think, nearly 2 years now. But what I actually love about it, and we should use these more, is that you guys create these cute little badges, and it's like, you've been climate positive for 15 months, congratulations, and you like celebrate our milestones, and then you say, oh, actually you've offset 50 kilograms of carbon, and you do all these great milestone things, and it's like mini achievements for the team to celebrate, and I love that about it. I feel like we should do that more. And one of the things that we talked about is having like big goals on our office walls and stuff like that, and so we were going to do stuff like social media and like marketing targets, but actually we're going to do one with tree planting and carbon offsets too. So we're going to put stuff towards it and celebrate the milestones. So I think that's also a nice thing that we could do, and I love that about Ecologi. And I do, like you're saying, your platform is just so much better in that sense, because you can celebrate those little things and you can actually see what you've contributed to, which is incredible.
Yeah, absolutely. All of those badges are downloadable and shareable. Yes, we work with big organizations that probably do have design resource in-house, but we also work with an awful lot of small businesses that probably don't. So actually being able to just download a badge that's ready-made, it's there to go, and it's sharing your achievement, pop it on the social, off we go. As easy as that. I think that's the real takeaway, that is that, this stuff has got to be easy. We can't be, obviously there's a huge amount of effort that is going into these things, but we know that anything that takes a lot of time, effort and resource to manage is at bigger risk of being kind of shelved or deprioritized.
Yeah, and we have design resources. We're a design agency, but we still appreciate having those assets ready to go because they're really cute and they're brilliant. So I love that, and I think let's explore the platform even more, because I want to talk about Ecologi Zero a little bit more. And obviously, I don't know how much you can say about it because it's still in the beta and still being launched. But we are privileged to have a sneaky peek at the beta as well. But I have to say that even someone who I feel like knows a little bit about sustainability and environmental impact, even I was quite intimidated by the dashboard. There's a lot of information on there. I was just like, oh my God, but it's incredible. All that information has just come from my accounting. And, it took a few minutes to set up. It took me a few clicks. I just was like, sign in. And all this data was suddenly being interpreted. So, obviously, that it's coming out officially soon, but what can you tell us about it? And, how can someone who is a bit intimidated by all the data, because it's extensive, it's pretty impressive, where do we start with this and what can we do with it and who should be signing up to it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so we're in the beta testing phase at the moment. I believe it's going live very soon. But anyone that's on the waiting list will have already got access to it, or will have access to it within the immediate future, which is really, really exciting, because as I mentioned previously, there's just been such a huge barrier for small to medium businesses in terms of calculating their footprint. And I think when we sort of think about a carbon footprint, especially for individuals that they might not be a sustainability manager, this probably isn't their background, and they might be doing this alongside the rest of their day job, which I'm sure is as completely challenging. There are things that are sort of fairly obvious. So how much energy are you using? Do you have a fleet of cars? How much petrol are you putting in them? But then there's lots of other things that form part of your emissions and your supply chain that you're not necessarily thinking about. So actually, by using the accounting data and the business expenditure, that's a great way to kind of access all of your data and kind of feed in that information, so we can see actually which areas of your spending are generating a huge amount of carbon, so that we can isolate those and make those changes. There is a lot of data there, definitely, but I would say the thing is to not be scared about it at all. Data is our friend, and this is the thing that's going to help us accurately measure this, accurately make those reductions, and tell the whole story as well. And I think another thing that sort of comes up a lot, and we were talking about this earlier, just at the beginning of the call, is that sometimes we speak to businesses that are in shared office spaces, for example, and whoever manages that building is not necessarily going to give them the data over the energy supply, the businesses, the building sort of footprint. And I think actually those sort of we're going to find that kind of leaseholders and landlords are under a lot more pressure over the coming months to actually be a lot more open about this data, because everyone needs it. We need this to accurately measure our footprint, and I think we're going to see that change.
Yeah, I found it so difficult in our workspace, and we're not in a co-working space per se, but we are renting obviously from a building with multiple offices, and I've written to them so many times. So it's been over a year since I first wrote to them about our energy suppliers and who's providing it. Is it green energy? And you need all this for like B Corp applications as well. Like all that information has to be put onto your impact assessment, and I just don't have this data, and I don't know what to do about it, and it's really difficult. And they just don't reply, and the company itself don't know who it is. And so I'm like, this is really bad. Like they don't care who's supplying the energy or anything like that. So I hope that it does put a little bit of pressure on these companies to be a bit more transparent, because again, transparency is exactly what is required from all businesses at the moment. Otherwise you can't accurately measure your carbon footprint at all. And actually on that note, I wanted to check about how businesses go about doing this accurately. Obviously we've got Ecologi Zero coming out, which is great, but what can like you said, most people who are landing in this sort of sustainability role don't have any history of it and don't have any experience, so they're just kind of learning their way alongside it. What are the biggest areas of impact on the carbon footprint that you've noticed in small businesses that have perhaps the biggest wins? Because I feel like there were some areas which are really complicated, like we said, energy suppliers, like I'm giving up trying to find who that is and how to change those, but there are probably some really quick big wins that we can make as a small business. So from your experience at Ecologi, what have you noticed that small businesses maybe like where they can improve and what they can do to make a big impact quite quickly?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the thing is, you've got anything that's within your control should be the things that are most easy to change. So yeah, if you haven't got, if your landlord is being a little bit awkward about your energy supplies, then keep going, keep persisting. But in the meantime, things like who's hosting your website, who's hosting your computer servers, have you got a green pension? All of these things actually do have a carbon footprint attached to them. Most of these things will be entirely within the business's control, and these are the things that where we can make those changes and generate those reductions as well.
That's incredible. I think people don't really think about those things, that especially pension funds and stuff, because that's becoming a big thing at the moment, green pension funds. Mm-hmm. and just like you wouldn't even think about some of these things. Like obviously for us, we think about green hosting all the time. This is a big thing of ours, like, making sure that we're creating also sustainable lower carbon websites as well, like building it in a way that emits less carbon. Most people we speak to don't even realize that's a thing. They're just like, oh, realize really? And we just did a website design, and we looked at the impact before and after, and it's saving 500 kilograms of CO2 a year.
Wow,
it's insane. And we were like, whoa, when we looked at this, and we didn't realize what the impact it was. And it's just incredible. And I feel like people need to know this data and how bad some websites are actually being built at the moment. Like, and it's emitting this much carbon. It's crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there was sort of within the sort of office space, there was such a big drive for everyone to go paperless that everyone kind of forgot that actually whenever you send an email, whenever you open Google, there is a carbon footprint attached to that. There are emissions being generated, and we've got to do the best we can to reduce those and mitigate those.
Yeah. And so how does Ecologi plan to kind of pick this up in future? Because obviously you guys have got everything in place, which is great, to do the tree planting bit and the carbon offsetting bit. So obviously if we want to kind of make that impact, but in terms of measurement, obviously you've got Ecologi Zero. Are there any other plans for the future to kind of help small businesses? What does the future look like at Ecologi in terms of that?
Yeah, at the moment, I would say Ecologi Zero has been our biggest project. It's been several years in the making. It's been hugely complicated, and there is an amazing team that are working on this behind the scenes. And I would say that really is going to be the game changer for us, because previously, yes, we've been the climate impact provider, but now we kind of complete the loop because we can offer that measuring and that calculating element as well. So I would say that's kind of been the biggest game changer. Looking forward to next year, we're going to be onboarding wildflower conservation onto the platform as well. So that'll be UK based, and also carbon removals. So carbon removals are different from carbon avoidance. So carbon avoidance might be something like that wind farm where the carbon is being avoided because we're using a renewable energy source, whereas carbon removals actually suck carbon out of the air and are kind of starting to undo some of that, the atmospheric carbon that's already up there. So we're going to be onboarding those onto the platform next year, which is really, really exciting, because then they can be used as part of that net zero strategy. So, once you've made those 90% reductions across your scope 1 to 3 emissions, that 10% you can use carbon removals to neutralize to ultimately get to net zero. And that's been, a hugely complicated project for our impact team, because it's relatively new technology. Carbon avoidance credits is a very established market. You've got organizations like Gold Standard and Verified Carbon Standard, who are the certification bodies. They're independently assessing all of those projects, making sure they're being run properly. Actually, carbon removals, because it's so new, it kind of doesn't have the sort of same structure and that sort of framework built in. So that's been that huge challenge for the team in ensuring that these projects are that we can be confident that they really are delivering the most impact. They're being held under the same scrutiny as all of the other projects that we've put onto the platform. So yeah, that's hugely exciting, because previously carbon removals haven't been widely available to the market. So that's something we're really looking forward to. I think there's also a really interesting sort of responsibility for us as Ecologi as well, to make sure that people know how and when these should be used, how they're different from carbon avoidance, because again, there's just so much climate jargon kind of floating about that actually it's really important for us to educate people on how to use these correctly.
Yeah, and it is really confusing. And I think that, also it's probably spurring some slightly, I don't know if it was unethical, but, slight behavior where people are just kind of doing really bad, impactful things for carbon footprint, and then saying, I'm just going to offset the carbon because they think that's okay. So, people taking a private jet to just go down the road and, like driving their Lambos, 100 miles an hour in the city or whatever. And, that I think this obviously is extremely bad for the environment, but they're like, I just offset the carbon. It's okay. It's fine. So how much of that do you see, and what impact does that actually have? In terms of environmental impact, does it actually make any difference if people do that sort of thing?
Yeah, I mean, that's not something we would endorse at all. That's basically paying away the problem is that's not the answer. But actually, used correctly, carbon offsets are a really brilliant tool as part of that climate part of in the fight against the climate emergency. I would say that the people that we're speaking to, they're coming to us because they want to make a difference. So generally speaking, they are not the sort of people that are flying around in a private jet and then just thinking, we'll just pay away the problem at all. It's people that genuinely want to make a change. They want to learn more about this. They're coming to us for our guidance and our experience to be able to walk them through this journey and help them do that. And I think that folds into sort of Ecologi's ethos and our heart as well. So there are certain businesses that we wouldn't work with. For example, we would never work with a fossil fuels business because it would be completely against our mission to do that. So that sort of folds into that other level of we're holding our customers in as high levels and under the same sort of scrutiny as we are with our partners as well.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that's what it's the same with every business. I feel like you should only work with people who share your values. And I think that's why I love the Million Tree Pledge, because I feel like all the businesses there are very like-minded and they're all kind of, have the same sort of mission. So I guess, I'd like to, wrap up by talking about the Million Tree Pledge again, and just sort of, I guess, hear from Ecologi's perspective of why the pledge is so brilliant and why people should be joining the pledge.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, basically, it's a turnkey sustainability strategy. You can start this today. You know, the work on your carbon footprint is of course really vital, is really important, but that's going to take a long time. You know, most people, it's going to take you probably at least 6 months, a year, probably, and you know, and that falls into that longer net zero strategy that might take 10 years or even longer to achieve that. But actually, this is something that we can get started on now that's going to have a really huge impact on the environment in 10, 15 years' time, and ultimately leave a forest that's going to be there for many, many generations to come. I know we've talked a lot about sort of carbon sequestration and the sort of that side of things, but actually there's so many benefits that trees have as well. So, you know, stabilizing soils, you know, protecting coastlines from storms and erosion, obviously restoring habitats for wildlife. And that's something that we've seen as part of the projects that we're working on as well. You know, for example, in Madagascar, lots of those trees are mangroves, and mangroves are a really, really vital habitat for fish, because lots of the fish come into the mangroves to sort of use them as their little nursery. So actually, if you kind of decimate that ecosystem, that has a huge effect, a knock-on effect going down the food chain, as you will, because you know those baby fish just aren't growing up to be able to you know, feed the bigger creatures. And that's the thing, the way that we've got to look at this. You know, you're planting one tree, but the ripple effects and the waves that has across the environment are huge.
Absolutely. I think that's so nicely put. And I think that, you know, you can join the pledge, like you said, and you don't have to part with nearly £250,000, which is what it sounds like it is. Well, some of these businesses are, and that's what's so incredible. I feel like all the businesses in the pledge are SMEs pretty much, and you know, some of them are pledging that much money, and it just shows you how much it means to them, and the sort of businesses that you're going to get in. But and also I wanted to point out that, you know, you can join the pledge even if you've already planted trees with another provider, right?
Yeah, you can. Yeah, I would say as long as they're reputable, that provider can tell you where those trees are and that you can evidence them. Then yeah, absolutely.
So exactly, Ecologi is helping team up with other people. It's not just all about you guys, which I love. And so, you know, you're bringing in other providers to help support. But, you know, so also just to clarify, with the Million Tree Pledge, it is just about the trees in this case and not about the carbon offsetting.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, in the future, yes, when those trees are up and, you know, fully mature 20 years from now, then maybe that there might be able to have carbon credits attached to that. But at the moment, we're only talking about tree planting.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you so much. And obviously, like, to know more about Ecologi, head on over to ecologi.com. And then also, I'm sure, Charli, you'll be around. You could drop Charli a message to ask any more questions, because it is super confusing sometimes about these carbon credits and offsetting and, like I said, reduction and all the terms, climate positive and all that sort of stuff. So it is very confusing. But thank you so much for coming in and talking with us today.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, and thanks everyone for listening. And if you have any other questions about the pledge, then, you know, come hit me up or hit Marcus up, and we'll be happy to answer any questions. Thanks so much.
Great. Take care. Bye.